Hi there. My name is Steven Snyder. This is the new Serbat Gem. Today I'll be interviewing Victor Sherwin, the founder of the new Serbat Gem, trying to raise proceeds for the nonprofit organizations to help fund homeless veterans, people in need, anything that might help out the community. And so today I shall be interviewing him to give you insight on Victor's life and what he used to be. So, Victor, tell me, what year were you born and where were you born at?
I was born in the mid-30s. I was born in a place called Cherry Valley. This is Southern California. It's near Beaumont, California. It's close to I-10 now. Before then it was not I-10. My folks always had a chicken ranch for egg production. It's a 7-day a job. I was born really, it was very rural, no neighbors. I grew up, both my parents were Lithuanian and they spoke Lithuanian. And so did I when I went to kindergarten. I did not speak English. I learned fast. And I remember, in kindergarten, Beaumont, one thing I remember about it, that's the first time that vitamin pills, one a day, was offered to children. They were playing with it, and I've been taking vitamins ever since, and it's paid off. I'm pretty healthy.
So, being from the 1930s, you've seen plenty of things in the past 80 years, haven't you?
Oh, yes. I remember growing up in Cherry Valley. Must have been, late 30s, early 40s. Beginning of Second World War. My folks had a relative visiting from Chicago, my Uncle Tony. It's the only relative I've ever had. I met, anyway. Heard a noise, a bunch of bombers, just formations of these B-57s, is it? B-52? I don't know, there were just formation and formation of them flying from east to west, I guess, to be shipped over. It was awesome. My Uncle Tony, big guy, he was in the Marines, had his greens on. It must have been winter time. And I was standing next to him. And so when I went in the service, I went in the Marines to kind of follow him. So I had a great childhood, just always by myself and 2 dogs, because my folks were working every day. So that's kind of where I grew up. Then we moved to a place called Yucaipa. It's near Redlands. It's about 60 miles east of LA. I-10 goes by there too. Carefree life, just not so rural. We had neighbors and so forth. Had another chicken ranch. I loved it. I grew up in the 40s and 50s there, and I remember that's when America was great. We had all this industry that was idled after the war. We were the only country that made stuff, steel, cars, trucks, trains, because all these other nations were depleted from the Second World War. So that lasted through probably to the early 60s. It was prosperous. People were good. There were no crime then, but what do I know on that? I always lived rural, and I loved it.
So you said you were in the service in the Marines, correct?
Yeah.
And what years were you in the Marines for?
53 to 56.
Now that must have been another fun experience to be going through.
Oh yeah, first off I went to North Carolina, Camp Lejeune for training. I was a mechanic. I come out with a trade. And I had a buddy that took me home for a weekend to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. First time I've ever seen segregation. Their town in Myrtle Beach, he told me one side is for the blacks and the other side is for the whites. And growing up Southern California, I knew nothing about segregation. Then I went to Japan for 15 months. Loved it. I was stationed at the base of Mount Fuji. I even hiked it one year at the top. It was,
wow.
It was interesting. It takes you more than a day to get to the top, from what I remember. But you start out with this Fuji stick. You buy a stick, like a hiking stick. It's wooden. Then they have these little huts along the way you could rest or they'll feed you. Everything is carried up by this trail by people. And they have this little fire going and they have branding irons and they take it and burn this in their logo on the stick, on your Fuji stick. So by the time you get to the top, it's all covered with markings from branding. That was great. It was just a small little logistics base, maybe a couple of hundred people at most. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. And been to Tokyo and Yokohama and Kobe and great experience. Didn't want to come home.
That's one nice thing about being in the service. You get to explore a lot of different places around the world.
Oh yeah. I think everybody should go in the military for, like the Israelis do, for a short period and at least, perform community service. But then after the service, I worked as an electrician and a mechanic for 10 years, and got into property buying and selling for quite a few years, and got married when I was 40. We had a great time. It's my wife was Florence, is her name. We a lot of road trips, a lot of camping trips. Oh, just many things like that. Usually in a van. First I had a 65 Ford van, and then I got a 65 Volkswagen van, which was just more fun. Then kind of moved to a place called Dolan Springs in Arizona. First we moved to a place called Tacoma Hot Springs near Death Valley in Southern California. It's a little hot springs town, and they have different baths. They had a community bath. Men and women are separate, and they have some private resorts. Lived there for about 3 years and just loved it. Just a healthy place to live. And then we moved to Dolan Springs and lived here for close to 30 years. And then I got too old. My wife died, and recession got the paper. Had a newspaper. That's the Sir-Bat Gem, and it had a 25-year history. Then I got the paper from the original owners. Then the recession hit, and just advertising dried up. Then my wife died, and had claimed bankruptcy, and now I'm back to doing this. It's still in my blood. I loved getting information out to people. Try to be no politics and keep religion out of it, and politics, and we will talk about events and so forth, of course, but just a clean newspaper. And here I sit right now with Steve. Tell me about yourself, Steve. Steve is our tech guy. He's our tech genius.
Well, I haven't really lived much of my life. I was born in Riverside, California, but I actually grew up in Hemet, California until I was about 10 years old when my parents got divorced. And ever since then, my life I've been moving everywhere. So from there, I ended up moving to Vegas with my mother, and I went to school out there. I was in karate for about 4 years, which is where I kind of got my discipline from, and like my attitude about certain things. And from there, I ended up getting tired of living with my mother, and of course, it was a 14-year-old boy decision to be like, I'm going to go move back in with my father. And from there, he lived in California for that period of month or 3 months that I moved back to California. He decided to abruptly, I'm going to move to Arizona where my friend Ray lives. So me, my dad, and my sister out of nowhere packed up all our things and moved to Kingman, Arizona, which is where we're at now. I lived out here until I finished college and graduated on time. I was the only one of 3 siblings to actually graduate on time. My sister Sierra, she had to go back to night school for adult classes to get her GED, and my sister Ashley, she's trying to get her GED, but she's been struggling for a little while. She struggles in math, as much as I've tried to help her too, but oh well. I hope she'll eventually get it one day. After that, I ended up going to college in Henderson, which is just outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. I went to ITT Tech. I was going there for about 8 months and working at Chuck E. Cheese. I was learning to be an assistant technician working on the video games there. And one morning I came into the store and inside the walk-in fridge, the CO2 had been being released into the walk-in fridge all night because of one of the wine canisters were empty. So I ended up going in there to change it real quickly, and I guess I breathed in enough CO2 to where it made me nauseous enough all day, and I couldn't go to college that day. I even got a doctor's note to miss class, but since I missed 3 classes in a row, I ended up being dropped from college. But come to find out, 2 years later, ITT Tech was sued by the government for fraud. So, I mean, it was kind of a good thing, bad thing situation. I'm still, actually, no, I just finished paying off all my student loans due to a federal forgiveness program. And thank God for the government for doing that, because instead of paying the $5,000 left in debt that I had, I only had to pay $600 to clear out my debt. Saved me a lot of money.
What were you studying to do?
Drafting and design. Traditional drafting and design was done on a stencil with paper and pencil, doing it the old-fashioned way. I was taught how to do it on a computer with AutoCAD, so I can put it on any computer, import it, export it, and design it anywhere. I started off in high school with that subject. It was my freshman year, and I made it all the way to college and only did a couple semesters of it. Where I'm at now, it wasn't that useful. It did come useful to a couple jobs, Chuck E. Cheese being one of them, because Chuck E. Cheese had diagrams on how to fix the rides, and they would use the same blueprints as the ones I would design. And after Vegas, I ended up moving back to Kingman for 3 months, and my dad was working at a cable company at the time, and he was driving his truck through a mud pit and ended up getting his truck stuck. And since it was the second time that happened within a 6-month period, they said that you can't have that many accidents on your record, so they fired him for it. Yeah, it was crazy. So he had about $12,000 in his 401k, and he pulled out all that he could. It was about 8,000, I think, is what he told me afterwards. And we used that to live for the next couple months. And this is where it gets interesting. We decided that we were going to move to Colorado Springs, Colorado, where my friend Tom was, my friend Tom was living with us at that time. His father lived there. And so we packed up all our stuff in the back of the Jeep with a 20-foot trailer on the back of the Jeep with all the stuff in the back of it. Drove all the way out to Colorado Springs, Colorado. Dropped off Tom, and we get a call from my sister Ashley, and I won't lie, she was on a bunch of drugs at that point. She said she was about ready to kill herself, so we turned around and drove back and picked up her. And instead of going back to Colorado Springs like we should have, we just went straight to California to my aunt and uncle's house because that was a better choice for her. Next 6 months, she sobers up from all the drugs while we're out there, and we tried to survive, but we're having trouble making enough money just to even get our own place. And California is expensive. It's tough. So from there, we decided that after 6 months, we're going to move all the way to Michigan because we have other family out there that we could possibly stay with. And staying at my cousin Chris's house, and for some reason, his mother wanted to kick us out, and I think it's because her ex-husband used to be her brother-in-law, which is my father. So that's what we came to the conclusion of, but you never know, it could have been anything. So we ended up moving out and staying in a hotel there for about a year. I was working at Chuck E. Cheese again out there because I had experience, and ended up quitting that job and working at a car wash. I was making, let's see, $400 or $500 a week easily there. And especially in the wintertime. I'd make it twice as much because Michigan, there's so much snow that they're going to spray all the salt off the bottom of all the nice cars that come through. Ended up getting into a fight with the boss because he didn't actually pay me in an hourly rate. I ended up just making money only off tips, and I was like, why should I have to take out the trash that your customers throw out when I'm only making tips? He ended up firing me that day, but that's alright. I ended up getting another job like a week later at a CNC shop, and that's when the drafting and design experience came back into hand, because the CNC shop also used the same blueprints that I'd be designing the parts with. So pretty much I'd read the blueprint, type it in the computer, have the part come out designed the way it wants it done, measure it with my micrometer, and make sure it's all the size. And one day at the motel, my dad ended up getting into a fight with the manager at the motel. He ended up getting right into my dad's face, and my dad pumped his chest at him, and Mike got offended and said that he tried to swing at him and called the cops and had us kicked out. So I decided at that point that I wanted to get out of Michigan and come back to Kingman. So I came back here to Kingman, moved into my brother-in-law's house, and I don't know what happened to my sister, but she's like, okay, you can stay here, but only for so long. Then you gotta move out. So I ended up moving out into my own place with my ex-girlfriend Linda, and a month after we moved out of my brother-in-law's and sister's house, she moved out a month later. I was like, well, what's the point of kicking me out if you're gonna move out? But it's family for you.
Yeah. Well,
after that, I lived in that one house for about 4 months, and it was a house that was going up for sale, but it was just a temporary spot to live in because we knew the owner personally, and he let us stay there. But I ended up saving up enough money in that 4-month period to go into my own house with my ex-girlfriend Linda, and she ended up leaving me for another dude because she got pregnant with him. But that's a whole another story I don't need to talk about.
No.
It's been a interesting ride.
You've been around a little bit.
Yeah, I've been around
for a young man.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of states, so that's why I decided just to come back to Kingman now, and I've been here for, I'd say it'll be 3 years now, and I believe, no, yeah, 3 years.
Well, that's done a lot for a young man.
Yeah, there's still plenty I'm going to have to go through, too.
Yeah. One more thing, this is about myself. We moved to Dolan Springs, as I said earlier. It was, we bought a piece of property. It was 20 acres, well, 19 acres. It had a well on it, no power, and a dome house, and a few outbuildings. Dome house is probably 40 foot in diameter, and we happened to just had sold our previous house, and we had a little bit of money, so we started adding on to the well, first, this is at the Hoover Dam in Boulder City in Nevada. They were building a big visitor center, big construction site. So we had a son-in-law working there. And when they close the site, they throw everything away. They don't save anything. You just, I had a tractor trailer bring over almost 2 or 3 loads of wood and so forth. This 3/4 inch plywood they use for forms, perfect shape. Big timbers, 6 by 24 timbers, and so we started adding to this dome because it didn't have any side building like a kitchen or anything. And so best time of my life was help building that and putting up solar. Back then, solar wasn't. This is close to 30 years ago. Solar wasn't that big a deal. Oh, it just I put up wind turbines. I built the towers. I built 3 35-foot towers. Put solar panels in. The well works off of solar. And used the house. Had a refrigerator and TV and computer and just like a regular house. But it was expensive back then. I forget how much, but it was a lot. And we lived there for a little over 26 years, and well, about 30 years actually. And one of the best things I ever did in my life was building that and having somebody help me who knows what they're doing. And it was going to be a recording studio because the acoustics are so good in a dome. It's just astounding. Had a wedding in the dome one time. Had almost 70 people in there. Surprised how many people could get in there. Everybody brought their own chair, of course. That's about, well, there's a lot more in my life than that, but that's, I haven't talked about it for a long time. In fact, I rarely talk about things about myself.
Well, as soon as many interviews as will come up, we'll eventually uncover more secrets about our past lives. I'm pretty sure they'll come up.
Yeah, that's right.
Alright, well, this has been an interesting conversation about ourselves, Victor.
Yeah, even you know, it's working pretty good so far.
Oh, it is.
And I just love doing these interviews. It just, because I have nothing to do. I'm too old. And I have to keep busy. Otherwise, you just dry up and blow away.
Yeah, we don't want that happening.
No, I'm not ready yet. But there's going to be a lot of VA stuff on this podcasting, so stay tuned.
We'd like to also apologize for the short break that we've had. Conflict in scheduling has made it hard for us to get any recording done, but hopefully from here on out we will be back on our regular schedule and recording every week. Alright, my name is Steven and Victor.
Goodbye for now.
You have a wonderful day.
Adios.